Ethiopia is an ancient country in the eastern part of Africa lying along the coast of the Red Sea, which came to be known as Abyssinia since the distant past. Its boundaries, as they existed in the 7th century, are not easy to define now. The Kingdom of Abyssinia was also one of the oldest in the world. The Jewish sources denote that the Queen Sheba belonged to Abyssinia and her progeny by Solomon ever ruled the country. The Jews started migrating to the country from the 6th century BC after the destruction of Solomon's temple, but Christianity became the dominant faith of the people by the 4th century. When the Jewish monarch of Yemen persecuted the Christians of his land, Emperor Justin I wrote to the Negus of Abyssinia to help the Christians. Negus of Abyssinia is said to have complied by sending an army which captured Yemen in 525 AD and retained the hold of Abyssinia over it for about 50 years. Abraha was the viceroy of Abyssinian king in Yemen who led an army to destroy the house of God in Makkah, whence came off the memorable event of Am al-Fil, or the Year of the Elephant. The capital of Abyssinia was at Aksum. Being a sovereign state, it was neither dependent nor a tributary to any alien power. Of course, as a Christian country, it had friendly relations with Byzantium, which was then regarded as the protector of Christendom. The Byzantine emperor respected the independence of Abyssinia, for Justinian had sent his ambassador by the name of Julian to the Count of Aksum. De Lacy O'Leary writes in the Arabia before Muhammad that, from 522 to the rise of Islam, the Abyssinians controlled the southern end of the Red Sea, including trade with Africa, perhaps that with India as well. The official title of the king of Abyssinia was Negusa Nagasht, or King of Kings of Ethiopia. But the name of the king to whom the prophet sent his letter inviting him to embrace Islam has been variously mentioned in different sources. However, we have before us two kings of Abyssinia. One of these is the king during whose reign the Muslim migrated from Mecca to Abyssinia under the leadership Ja'far bin Abi Talib, in the 5th year of the prophet messengership of Muhammad. But it is highly improbable that the prophet wrote any letter to Negus at that time. The circumstances prevailing with the prophet at Mecca then were unfavorable for addressing such a letter to any ruler. And in any case, it was neither an appropriate time for inviting any noble or king from a foreign land to accept Islam, nor did he send any such letter, according to the traditions, to any foreign dignitary. All that the traditions suggest is that the prophet had requested the then Negus to afford protection to the Muslims in his country, for they were being severely persecuted by the Quraysh. Similarly, The writings of Ibn Hisham and others imply that the Negus had admitted the truth of divine revelation and accepted that Jesus was a prophet, and word of God cast by him unto Mary, the mother of Jesus. In so far as the Negus to whom the prophet had sent his letter is concerned, he was, according to Ibn Kathir, the king who succeeded the Negus who had been given asylum to Ja'far Abi Talib. Ibn Kathir maintains that the letter inviting him to accept Islam was written to the Negus before the conquest of Mecca along with other monarchs. Ibn Kathir's view appears to be preferable, for this second Negus accepted Islam, and of whose death the Prophet informed the Muslims and prayed for his salvation. Waqidi and some other biographers of the Prophet have stated that the Prophet had prayed for the Negus after a return from Tabuk in Rajab 09 AH. The consequential circumstances of the event suggest that Waqidi is correct in holding this view and in its dating. Reaction of the monarchs. Heraclius, Negus and Muqawqis received the letter from the Prophet, with all due respect that each gave a courteous reply. Negus and Muqawqis showed the highest regard to the envoys. Khosrows too was indignant. He tore the letter into pieces, saying, "My slave dares to write me thus." When his reply was conveyed to the Prophet, he said, "Even so shall God shatter his kingdom to pieces." Khoros too wrote to Badhan, who was his governor in Yemen, to get the Prophet sent to him in Ctesiphon. Badhan deputed Babwe to tell the Prophet what Khoros too had written to him and that he had come to take him to the king. But when Babwe came to Medina, the Prophet told him, "God has given Shirve power his father, and he has killed Khoros too." Heraclius and Abu Sufyan. Heraclius decided to satisfy himself about the contents of the Prophet's letter. He ordered to search for a man from Arabia who could tell him about the Prophet. Abu Sufyan happened to be there on a business trip, and so he was summoned before him. The questions raised by Heraclius on this occasion showed that he had a deep insight into the scriptures and the teachings of the Prophet of yore, and he knew how and when God sends them and the way they are usually treated by their people. Abu Sufyan, too, acted like a true Arab, for he considered it below his dignity to tell the emperor anything but truth. The conversation between Heraclius and Abu Sufyan is significant enough to be quoted here at full length. Heraclius, tell me about his lineage. Abu Sufyan, he comes of the best lineage. Heraclius, did anybody before him make the claim he does? Abu Sufyan, no. Heraclius, had there been any king in his family? Abu Sufyan, no. Heraclius, Who have followed him? Are they the poor and the weak or the nobles? Abu Sufyan, they are all poor and weak. Heraclius, are his followers increasing or deserting him? Abu Sufyan, their numbers are growing. Heraclius, do those who enter his religion despise and leave him? Abu Sufyan, no. Heraclius, did you find him telling lies before he made the claim? Abu Sufyan, no. Heraclius, did he ever break the word given by him? Abu Sufyan, not as yet, but we will see what he does in the future. Heraclius, did you ever fight against him? Abu Sufyan, yes. Heraclius, what was the result? Abu Sufyan, the fortunes have varied, sometimes in our favor, sometimes in his. Heraclius, what is it that he teaches? Abu Sufyan, he asks to worship one God, and not associate aught with him. To offer prayers, be virtuous, to speak the truth, and be kind to the kinsman. Heraclius then asked the interpreter to tell Abu Sufyan, I asked you about his lineage and you replied that it was the noblest among you. Prophets always come from the best lineage.